Yo, what is going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be ranking the top 5 mutant champions in the game. This one is going to be one of the hardest classes to do because there are so many good mutant champs. But before we get into the video, this is my personal opinion. It is totally cool to have a different opinion. Nobody in this game is going to rank every single character in the exact same fashion because we've all had a different experience in this game with our crystal pulls, with the characters that we've got, the characters that we've played. So no one's going to agree on everything, and that's totally cool, man. That's what makes this game, each player's unique, that, you know, we all have different experiences. So today we're going to be talking about the mutant class, and so the two concepts for making this list that I do is, the first one is how good a character is, like on paper, how good I think they are, how good I hear they are, what I see from other people, what I hear, you know, that kind of thing, the potential I think that these characters have. And then the second thing is going to be based on my personal experience playing with them with my own two hands, and from my experience. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get to the number 5 spot. We're gonna have some honorable mentions we'll talk about at the end. There's gonna be a lot. It's gonna end up being like a top 10 list or something, but yeah, let's go ahead for number 5. Let's jump in. We have Apocalypse. So Apocalypse is so cool in the fact that he buffs the entire mutant class, you know, like that is sick. So cool. His Horseman of Apocalypse is one of the coolest things that Kabam has added for like new character wise abilities. I think like it's such a unique thing, and it's so fitting for Apocalypse, who's like the first ever mutant, and he can make any mutant a horseman of him and increase their power. Like I think that is just such a cool concept, and I feel like they really hit the nail on the head for the execution. And yeah, so I think that alone, just that ability that Apocalypse has alone, guarantees him a top 5 spot. Like how can this guy not be a top 5 in the class when he literally buffs the entire class? Like he has to make it somewhere on the top 5, even if it is the 5th spot, just for that ability alone, as long as he's like not a totally useless champion on his own otherwise, right? So just based off that alone is awesome. But he's not a useless champion on his own, not by any means. His own abilities, he is a super awesome character, man. And it's funny because like a lot of people didn't think he was going to be good when the initial deep dive, I think it was, came out. But yeah, he is phenomenal. Everyone knows how good Apocalypse is now. Everyone tried so hard to get this dude. Once you really build up his damage, it's pretty nuts. You can get permanent debuffs going, and it's just permanent damage per second. You can get I think it's like over 70% concussion or something like that. You get a big weakness on the opponent to lower their attack. You can also counter evade. You can become immune to bleed and incinerate. And his damage is just phenomenal, especially with the strife synergy. Once you build up his genetic code, I think, and you can get 4 prowess, then his specials start hitting really hard. And with the strife synergy, it ramps up his special attack damage. Like just so much potential with this guy, and like his singular abilities paired with his horseman abilities for the entire mutant class, it just makes him like such a phenomenal, well-rounded champion. So I think he definitely deserves a top 5 spot. Could see him going higher. It's just the next champions I have are just also so insane by their own right. So it's hard to put him any higher than the top 5 spot. But Apocalypse definitely deserves to be in the top 5 list, in my opinion, for all of those reasons. So coming in at the number 4 spot, we have Colossus. Now, this list is probably going to be one of the most controversials because this, man, it's so hard. Again, this is just my opinion based on my perspective playing this game for 4 whatever years. So it's really tough, especially this class. It's so hard to rank. So it's totally cool if you disagree, and I totally understand. But yeah, we have Colossus at the number 4 spot. I think Colossus has a lot of potential, a lot more potential than some other champions on this list with the right synergy team. I think with the right synergy team, Colossus could be considered arguably, potentially, the best mutant in the game. I could see it with a full synergy team surrounding him as a horseman with Professor X on the team too. Like all this stuff, he can get to a pretty insane potential. But just Colossus, on his own, I think he's a tad overrated, just a tad. But I do think he still makes it in the top 5 list, which is still pretty impressive just on his own. Put him at number 4 spot. I do think he's a really solid champion. I just think he's just a tad overrated. In my own personal opinion. But I do think he's a beast. I've seen some really crazy stuff with full synergy teams. But that's the problem. That's what I see too much of. Is just synergy teams, or ideal circumstances with a horseman and some other synergies and pre-fights and all this stuff. And I don't see a whole lot of just straight up Colossus gameplay. So it's really hard to gauge him on his own abilities, just on his own, because I don't see that too much. And I don't play a ton of Colossus either. But from what I have played, I am impressed. I took Colossus to... I remember I made a video like soon after he got buffed using him, and I was like, holy crap. Like, this was before a lot of people were on the Colossus train. And I was like, this dude's insane. Like, I would rank 3 as 6-star. This was like right after he got buffed. And I made a video showing him crushing stuff in Act 6. And then everyone was like, yeah, like, holy, like, wow, like that is impressive. But I think I did have some synergies too. And then the whole horseman stuff came out and all this other stuff, and it took him to a whole new level, which is really cool. But yeah, I do think Colossus is awesome. But for me, I put him at the number 4 spot, just because the next 3 champs I think are better on their own and just have more uses. So coming in at the number 3 spot, we have Archangel. So Archangel is he's such an interesting character, because I think he's the oldest character on this list. Kind of circle back around to that kind of once we get there. But yeah, he's a very old character. I think he came out in 2018. I started playing in 2017, and it was interesting. He came out with Psylocke and Iceman. It was a triple character month, and it was 3 mutants. And I remember way back then, he was definitely highly sought after and thought of as a really good character. But back then, man, people would compare Archangel to Iceman. If you weren't playing back then, you probably don't know this, and that might sound really weird to you. But yeah, Iceman and Archangel, people constantly argued about which one was better. And back then, it was a fair argument. It was a fair argument, and it made sense for people to argue over that, because they were really close now. But like now, like no one compares Archangel to Iceman. It's not even close. Like Iceman's not even in the talk for like top 10 anymore. And here's Archangel at the number 3 spot. Like Archangel has gone through like a roller coaster of like being talked about and used in like the high end of the game, and it's wild. It's actually wild, because Archangel wasn't used for like an entire year. I feel like it was like 2019. He wasn't really talked about. Like, he was kind of ignored. He was kind of forgotten about. But then something happened. I think this was a key factor in Archangel's re-rise to fame. It was that Alliance War shifted from having hidden defenders to showing the defenders. This was huge, because Archangel's biggest weakness is a character that has a bleed or poison immunity. That's his biggest weakness, because then he can't get his neurotoxin. If Archangel can get his neurotoxin, he has ridiculous damage based on RNG, and also insane utility by turning off abilities and heal blocking. Like, it's really insane what he can do if the opponent is not bleed or poison immune. But the uncertainty in Alliance War of not knowing who you're fighting, no one brought Archangel. Unless it was for like a boss or a mini boss that you could like visibly see, because you just couldn't risk it. If there's a chance of there being an immunity. Before, you'd have to just predict that it's worst case scenario, and you'd have to prepare for the worst case scenario on these hidden nodes. But after that, they were shown, Archangel became like such a beast. Like, oh, this fight, oh, okay, Archangel should shred that. And it became, and then people started using him all the time, and then we started seeing rank 5 Archangels, and it was like, wow, like, okay, like this is insane. Like, his damage is even crazier. And I think it's really cool how Archangel has come, how far he's come now, and how it's really come like full circle. I think it's awesome. I think he definitely deserves the top 3 spot. And the other thing, one of Archangel's other biggest weaknesses was RNG. And Apocalypse totally fixed that problem for him by making Archangel a horseman. Archangel, I think he has a specific synergy with Archangel. Yeah, which each of the attack and stun opponent has a 10% chance to pause on their turn in 30 seconds, and if the champion's a horseman, their toxin's stun duration is increased. That doesn't even really matter, but what does matter is the horseman ability specifically is plus 30% offensive ability accuracy. That ability accuracy alone is what makes Archangel just so good, because it really helps with his whole problem of RNG. So with all these things, Archangel has just been taken to a whole new level, and it's really, really awesome to see, man. Really, really awesome to see. So yeah, Archangel, he can be the #1 mutant in the right circumstances, but I think overall the next two characters, they just cover so much ground that I just couldn't put Archangel above them. But Archangel, man, such a beast. All right, let's move on to the #2 spot. Here's where it's going to get even more controversial. Omega Red. So I'm putting Omega Red in the #2 spot. A lot of people view Omega Red as the best mutant champion in the game, and I think that's totally fair, totally valid. He is good in so many situations, and his biggest weakness is robot champions that he can't really get his spores up against. But the really amazing thing about Omega Red is those spores, and the fact that he can do so much damage, and not have to worry about like damage caps or anything, because the damage he's doing is like passive damage over time, and nothing is immune to his spores. But like I said, robots, they just get the spores applied extremely at a slow pace. But yeah, Omega Red's such a phenomenal champion. I think the main thing for me that holds him back from being #1, I think if this was changed, I'd give him the #1 spot. And it's just this synergy with Sabretooth. I think that if he doesn't need the synergy, but it's rare to see an Omega Red in Alliance War without this synergy. So I think that speaks volumes to how reliant some people are with this synergy. I rarely see people in Alliance War using Omega Red without this synergy. You just don't see it, because if you're going to bring Omega Red to that kind of content, or like a Legends run or a Mythic run or something, like, you're going to bring along the synergy. And just having to bring that synergy along, if he had it built in, I'd give him the #1 spot. But just because it's not built in, that's my biggest gripe with him. But he is such a phenomenal character. I really like #2 in the best class in the game is still like good, you know. And again, it comes down to personal preference. I just think the next character, I just use them a lot more, and I just see a bit more usefulness overall. But Omega Red, definitely deserving of being one of the top mutants in the game for sure. This guy's insane, man. He's awesome. I went for Omega Red when he came out as a 5-star. I remember I played him in the CCP, and I'm like, this guy is something else. He's going to be the next meta in Alliance War. I said it during the CCP video, and then I went for him in Arena, grinded my butt off for him, got him, took him right to SIG 200, 565, and I played him so much back then. But nowadays, don't play him as much, partially because I don't have him as a 6-star. If I did, I'm sure I'd play him more. But yeah, also partially because this next champion is just so ridiculous. And our #1 spot, the absolute best mutant in the game, in my personal opinion, is Red Magneto. So Red Magneto got buffed. Like I said, Archangel's the oldest champion on this list, which Magneto's older, but his buff was after Archangel came out, so technically it's kind of newer. That's what I meant back then. But yeah, Magneto just, I think Magneto is by far the best buff we've ever had, and the best buff that we'll ever see. And I think that was on purpose and for a specific reason, because Magneto in the comics, if you really think about his ability, it is broken. Like, it is broken against metal champions. You know, against Iron Man, like, he could literally just crumple him. Boom. He's a ball now. He's a ball of metal and blood. Like, it is honestly ridiculous, like, how powerful Magneto is against metal champions. Like, it is ridiculous, like, if you really think about it. So he should have an overwhelming advantage against champions that are metal, and that's what he has now. He is just so ridiculous against champions that are metal. He turns off 70% of their ability accuracy. He has ridiculous damage potential. He has 50% permanent perfect block. Like, it's honestly so crazy how much he has and can do. Like, you end up killing most metal champions in one special 3. Champions that have over 500,000 health. One special 3, they're dead. Like it is honestly so ridiculous. And over 1/3 of the game is metal characters. It's just so ridiculous how good he is. And even against non-metal champions, he's not bad. He's still good, but it's just he's such a good and safe option against metal champions. Like it's such a good option. There's such a good chance of you winning the fight against a metal champion with Magneto that it's just so safe, man. Like it's by far the best option, So I think that's what really makes Magneto number 1 in my eyes. It's just that he's so good in those matchups. It's just ridiculous. Whereas other champs, are really good, but he's just so safe, And it's crazy. 1/3 of the game is metal. And, it's cool because Omega Red and Magneto actually complement each other because, Omega Red's biggest weakness is robots. And I think every robot in the game is metal. So Magneto, he crushes, he crumples them. So they kind of watch each other's backs, watch each other's weaknesses. And, Omega Red, it's good against a lot of champions that aren't metal, where Magneto wouldn't be as good. So it's cool that they kind of like two halves to this coin that cover just so much ground in the game. But yeah, for me, Magneto slightly edges it out just because of how good he is in those metal matchups. But again, totally my personal perspective and opinion. And yeah, if you disagree, that's totally cool. So that's the top 5 list, in my opinion. It's a very controversial one, I'm sure. Probably be the most controversial of the 6 classes. And now let's talk about some other honorable mentions. So there's so many. I think one of my personal favorites is actually Wolverine as a horseman. Just insane regeneration, insane damage output, critical bleeds. He's an animal. He's true to the name Wolverine, man. Honestly, so ridiculous. I think Wolverine as a horseman makes it into the top 5 list. I don't know who I would swap him out for. But horseman's not built in, so can't justify putting him there on a contingency like that. But yeah, Wolverine as a horseman, just so awesome. One of my favorite characters, honestly. Gambit also as a horseman is stupidly ridiculous. Gambit actually got buffed, so he's actually a pretty solid champion now. But as a horseman, he's the only character in the game that can get 100% permanent perfect block, which is one of the absolutely most ridiculous abilities in the entire game. There used to be, this was before I was even playing the game, there was a perfect block team, synergy team, and it was just so stupidly broken that Kabam nerfed it and they got rid of it because it was just, having 100% perfect block just makes the game a joke. It honestly does. So for Gambit to be able to get that and be the only character that can get that, that is insane. The only problem is, again, he has to be a horseman, so I couldn't justify giving him the top 5 on that contingency. But yeah, really cool as a horseman. Insane, absurd ability. Some other honorable mentions, White Magneto, his pre-fight alone is really cool, but White Magneto is really cool. I think if Red Magneto wasn't in the, if like we just hadn't, if Red Magneto was erased from everyone's brain, erased from the game files, and we just had White Magneto, I think White Magneto would be used way more and he'd be a top 5 mutant. But because of how much Red Magneto overshines him in their abilities alone, he's just more so used for a pre-fight and synergy type champ, which is fine. It's cool because he's got a really good pre-fight, so it makes sense. Another honorable mention, Namor, just an absolute beast. Namor, I used to think of Namor as like arguably the best mutant. I used to think like, who's better, Omega Red or Namor? And I used to really think about it, but now it's not close anymore. But Namor, when you need him, he really comes in handy, and he's the best man for a lot of jobs. The only problem is those jobs are quite rare, so you don't end up using him nearly as much as all these other characters. Professor X, another one, super cool, insane potential in Abyss of Legends and stuff like that. He's one of those characters that you really need to play a lot better. Like you need to have a good mastery over him, and if you have that mastery, he'll take you places. He really will, and I think that's really cool. And Domino is cool, but I just hate how reliant she is on the whole RNG. Sunspot is cool, but I feel like Sunspot's been overrated for a while. He's just more of a prestige champ in my eyes these days. He is still really cool, but I think all these other mutants just edge him out by a bit, And then the last one I want to mention is Cable. Actually, Cable went from 0 to hero with just synergy, which is pretty dang cool to see, man. With just the Apocalypse synergy, it took Cable from one of the most worthless champions in the entire game to just being an absolute god. Like, it's honestly ridiculous. Cable's Incinerate, no, that's not it. Cable's heavy attacks inflict deterioration on each hit and their stack limit is removed. Just that alone took Cable from 0 to hero, and it's honestly ridiculous. Like, I have a rank 3 Cable now, and a lot of other people do. This guy crushed so many lanes during the Mythic run, like, just with the synergy. This is crazy, which is just so cool. But yeah, guys, that is going to do it for the top 5 list of the Mutant class. And like I said, it ended up being like over probably 10 champs we talked about, but yeah, those are the champs I put at top 5 and my reasoning for it. Like I said, this one's probably going to be the most controversial. If you agreed with any of it, or I would appreciate a thumbs up. But yeah, if you disagree with any of it, please do leave a comment. Let's have a discussion. I want to hear about it. Who do you guys think are the top 5? Who do you guys think is the best mutants? And let me know why. That's going to do it, though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy. Peace out.